the leper, and all of the bad people of that day. But you got to remember something. He also changed them all. And in order to change them all, he had to present the truth. And sometimes the truth is tough. Just something on the other side. I'm sitting there, and I'm not fussing at nothing, but I'm sitting there hearing one side only of that coin. But there is the other side that says that the church still has an obligation to present the truth in an uncompromised fashion. And that's tough sometimes because it doesn't make you popular with anybody or anything. But it is good to see something like that because we see it and it seems like that is a truism that we all should embrace quickly. But there is that other side that you mustn't lose track of. And that is that the standards of the church cannot change to meet the culture. We are different. The Bible said, "Come out from the world and be ye separate." Now, the problem with being separate is, what does that say to you? To be separate means to be just like everybody else or different. So there is that second part of that coin that we should see. So let's go to the book of Revelation, chapter 6. We haven't got very far. We still aren't probably going to get very far. And I'm just going to read a little from Revelation before I go to Matthew. And in Revelation, and it says this, when I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard as it were the voice of thunder, one of the four beasts saying, "Come and see." And I saw, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him. And he went forth conquering and to conquer. One of the things that I didn't get to talk about on the white horse that I did want to mention is these words. And he went forth conquering and to conquer. One thing is missing: conquest. And it's important for us to see that because he's not totally successful. There is a remnant that will not bend and will not bow, and that remnant holds on to the truth no matter how much deception is out there. And remember, the white horse is all about deception. And everything the white horse does, everything that this rider of deception does, is to lead and make it easier for the next horses to perform their nefarious work that they're going to do. And so, we get to the next part. But here's what Matthew 24, 6 and 7, to the first part of 7 said, "And you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass. But the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom." There is these little areas that would make us understand how, when you're reading the four riders of the apocalypse, we see the white horse went forth conquer and to conquer. And then another thing happens, just as it is here. You shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, and be not troubled. And I think that a lot of the deeds that deception has done has made us feel ill at ease for the future, because we're surrounded today with a multitude of problems that are coming at us at a tremendous rate. And it's an interesting time that we see. Human society, by the way, seem to be inherently violent, and times of peace are too soon rent with conflict and war because of aggression and religious fervor or pure greed. And you just need to gaze at the 20th century to get a really good glimpse of this. And so we have seen a lot of war. If you could go to the next slide, please. The wording implies an expected increase in conflicts due to the stresses of the time leading up to the end. In other words, it's just not wars, but there's rumor of war. Everything is designed to take away peace. Okay? Remember, deception was to do that as well. Was to make the ground ripe and pregnant for a great upheaval. And this is what we're looking at. Next slide, we're looking at it now. And it suggests that this horseman not only deals in mass destruction, but he deals in civil war, border war, world wars, but also in smaller conflicts down to individual murders. And we're talking about taking away the very peace of the world. I don't know if you all noticed this or not, but the United States is going through a great upheaval. Something happened that was dreadful. Someone killed a black man. And somewhere in all of this, it was lost. And it became riots in every city. I seen on a multitude of little snippets that they had out there of people going up to somebody just on the street and for no reason whatsoever, just hitting them, hurting them. Just an old woman, 90-some years old, is walking down the street, and a young thug walks by and pushes her to the ground. She's unable to barely walk, and her head is busted open on the concrete. And he looks at this like, look what I did. What kind of thought process is in that individual? How much hatred is there in that individual? A black man, old black man, is walking in a mall, but he made the unfortunate mistake of wearing a lapel pin that had the United States on it, a little flag. The black man walked up to him and knocked him unconscious because he had the United States emblem on him. And there he lay, nobody helped him. A woman is sitting at a park, not doing anything to anybody whatsoever. And some black youths come along, and this guy makes sure that the camera is on him. He poses for the camera. He kicks his leg up in the air to show how tough he is and turn around, and he cold cocks this old woman and knocks her unconscious. But nobody in the crowd moves because everybody is frightened to death. They don't know what to do. This is warfare. This is awful warfare. And people say really silly things. Take somebody like the ketchup guy. What is he? Kerry, I think is his name. Says that if Trump is elected, we'll have civil war. That seems to be a very irresponsible thing to say for someone in his position. I don't know that we won't have civil war. I mean, I hope we don't. But remember, there is somebody out here that you don't see that has been very busy dividing the world. First in deception. There is nothing that you hear that you can believe in unless it comes out of this book. We have found a way, they have found a way to destroy our ability to gather news, real, legitimate news. We don't know truly what's going on in our nation. If someone was to invade us, the invasion would be over before we believed that it had started. So he's here, and he's involved not only in the great scale things, but also in the divisions that are happening even amongst the brethren in the churches. Wars and rumors of wars, so that there is no peace. Next slide, please. So the second seal also covers rising violent crime, gang activity, mob hits, assassinations, family feuds like the Hatfields and McCoys, and variety of personal disputes that turn violent. Next slide. It is a continuation. In saying wars and rumors of wars, Jesus seemed to be saying that some wars will be threatened, yet not fought. And we have that too. We have wars that are being threatened and not fought. But the point is that we are in a bad situation. Things have changed because I told you the white horse rider went out to deceive the world. and take away from us our ability to gather truth. And the red horse has come to destroy and to keep us in warfare, constantly fighting, fighting amongst ourselves, fighting all kinds of things. We fight because we're not kind to the red man. We fight because we're not kind to the black man. We fight because the black man is not kind to the white man. We fight because the Orientals don't like Aunt Jemima. I better explain that. Most of you know that Aunt Jemima, that you want to change her name, right? Did you hear that? Those of you that heard that? She made syrup. Her great-grandson is furious because she's a multimillionaire, because she was born a slave. She learned to make this syrup. She sold the rights to that syrup, became the spokesman for that syrup. And she was so articulate, so good at what she did, it became the #1 selling syrup in America. And she had a pancake mix too. So, because her name was Aunt Jemima, which she didn't have a problem with because it wasn't her name. I had her name written down, but I can't remember what it was. Green? Yeah. It came to me. I don't know how. By a disembodied voice, perhaps. But anyway, the thing is that she became a spokesman. And her family's furious because of the fact that this woman pulled herself up by her own strength of character, her own fortitude, her own, and now that whole entire history will be lost. The devil is not foolish. If America allows George Washington to be lost, you need to understand that that is the birth of our history, our United Nations, our United States. And if it is lost, then what we stood for way back when is lost altogether. And this is a sadness, because if you erase history, you know what it says, that if we forget history, if we ignore history, history is destined to repeat itself. And you have somebody like Kerry saying that if Trump is in, we'll have another civil war. There's another person that may have forgotten it. Next slide, please. So, the red horse is war. His symbol, the fiery red horse, the sword, the whole entire thing is about disunity and warfare. You can go to the next one. That's the idea behind it. The word translated rumors, by the way, is the common Greek word for sense of hearing. In the active sense, it is a report. It is a report. There's constantly, continuous, non-stop information coming in towards us about the fact that there is a rumor that something else is going to happen. And people are beginning to act upon the rumors as well. Next slide. So Jesus really means that we will hear the noise of war with our own ears, and we will also hear reports of wars occurring elsewhere. And you think about how this was written way back when, and yet God made it absolutely germane to the culture that we're in. He said, you're not only going to have war, but there'll be wars, and rumors of wars. You're going to have a sense of hearing about war, even before it's realized or seen. The next slide. So it could be anywhere. And there are more than 40 active conflicts around the world at the moment. Now, we're talking about major warfare here, 40 around the continent right now. We're not talking about what's going on in the United States with civil unrest. We're not talking about other places with civil unrest. We're talking about armed conflict right now. There's 40. Next slide, around the world. So Somalia civil war in Africa, the Kashmir unrest in India, there is war in Darfur, African civil war in Myanmar, Asia conflict in Donbass, and Ukraine is in war. Next one. South Sudan civil war, African conflict in Peru, the African conflict in Peru, South America instability in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Africa, the North Caucasus insurgency in Russia, and the next one, West Papua Civil War in Asia, the Cambodia War in Angola, Africa, the War on Terror in Egypt, the hybrid war in Africa. These are major conflicts. Go ahead, the next one. So, brings us to a fellow by the name of Saul Alinsky. Have you heard of Saul Alinsky? Any of you? How many of you have heard of Saul Alinsky? Raise your hand and keep him up there. Okay. He introduced a philosophy some time ago about how to basically take down America and make it a socialist state. And so he gave his ideas out there for us to peruse and consider. Go ahead to the next one. Number one, health care. Control health care and you control the people. Does this sound familiar to any of you? Control health care and you control the people. Why is that? Why do you think it is? This was his idea. If you was to control health care, how can you control the people? Well, I got to tell you right now, we don't like to go see the doctor unless we have insurance, right? Because it's very expensive, right? If you can't get health care, are you frightened, scared, worried, so on and so forth? Yeah. So Saul Alinsky knew that if you had control of health care, and I don't know if you've noticed this, but we have continually one particular party that has moved towards time and time and time again a government-sponsored health care so that others are not responsible anymore. Saul Alinsky said if you want to control the mass, you need to get their health care so that they are totally dependent upon you for their health care. For it to be privatized, or for people to be out there that can have access to health care outside of the government, you're losing that whole group of people. You need it to be controlled by the government. His next idea, health care, control health care, and you control the people. The next slide. Poverty. Increase the poverty levels as high as possible. Poor people are easier to control and will not fight back if you're providing everything for them to live. And you know, more and more and more people are talking about putting people on welfare to continue to increase the welfare rolls. Y'all remember, and I don't particularly like the fellow that was running for president, but he made one of the biggest mistakes ever when the Mormon fellow was running for office. He had a name, Mitt Romney, who is such a disappointment, but he was running for president one time. And he said that 47% of Americans are living in one form or another off of the government roll, which left 53% of America footing the bill. Do you all remember what happened? Because he said the truth, and it probably shocked him, 47% of the people that were living on the government dole had become the cry and the carrying cry of the Democrats against him, because he said that 47% of the people are just no value. And it's not what he said. He said that they were on the government roll. The more people that you have that are dependent upon the government, how are they going to vote? Whoever brings the bread is the one you love. Right? So Saul Alinsky, when he was writing this, he said, keep the people poor, make them, but then feed them, but let them be fed at the table of the government, and you'll not have to worry about their vote. I personally don't understand anymore some of the things that go into Washington. Well, almost all the things that go through Washington, I don't understand. But I do know that there is a move underfoot, a warfare that is underneath the radar, but just as legitimate as any other war. And it comes with control health care and keep people poor, and the government will be in charge. Next slide. His third thing is debt. Increase the debt to an unsustainable level. Has that happened? What is our national debt now? $23 trillion. There is not enough money in the world to back $23 trillion of debt. There's not. He said if you can increase the national debt to an unsustainable level, that way you're able to increase taxes, and this will produce more poverty. The more poverty you have, the more the people are dependent upon the government. If you have their health care and you kept them poor, and then you increase the debt to an unsustainable level, you'll have more taxes because somebody has to pay for this, and so you increase poverty. Next slide, I'm sorry. Gun control. This was written many years ago, but is gun control an issue today? Yes. You remove the ability to defend themselves from the government, and that way you are able to create a police state. If, you know, we have a thing called conceal and carry. If the world continues at the level that it is right now, people are not going to have conceal and carry. They're going to have open carry. I'm telling you, there's going to be people walking around with a 6-shooter attached to their hip here again because they're afraid to go outside without a 6-shooter. It's going to be like the Old West. Whoever's fastest wins. And us guys, old guys, we are not fast anymore. So I'm trying to get grenades. Huh?
More than you already have?
Yeah, a few. I have that one gun. But if you are able to make the people, health care is in the hands of the government, and welfare is in the hands of the government, and you have an unsustainable debt, and that puts more and more people into poverty. You increase the taxes, that puts more people into poverty, and then you take away their guns. Next one. Welfare. Take control of every aspect of their lives. Food, housing, and income. All of them. If you're going to be successful with this, you have to go all out. And Saul Alinsky said you must continue with these points. Hound them, hound them, hound them. You must not slow down. You have to continue to batter the doors. Batter the doors. Don't ever stop. You have to continue until the nation succumbs. That sounds like somebody is behind this. There is an idea behind it. Of course, we had the White Horse Rider talking about how to set up all the things. You know, when I was growing up, and I know I'm old. So, you know, we're going back into antiquity. My grandparents would not take welfare under any circumstances. Wouldn't do it. Matters of fact, back in those days, if you had to take welfare, basically you really felt the pressure of being not a worker. And they had this philosophy that unless you worked, you didn't deserve anything. And so they had this philosophy kind of like by the sweat of your brow shall you eat. And your expectation should be from nobody else except for what you are able to accomplish. It was a different generation. Some of you had parents like that maybe? Grandparents like that? Yeah. A lot of hands went up because you remember it. Even some of us that are not as old as I am still remember that whole entire thing about maybe we shouldn't do this. Maybe this is not good. I got to tell you, most of us received a stimulus check, yeah? I didn't think that was a good idea at all. And I'm sure that a lot, and by the way, I took the stimulus check and put it back into the economy. I thought that was what it was for. Most people took it to the bank and saved it for a rainy day. I hope that the rainy day never comes, but it was a stimulus check, so being that I had this bonus, I mean, let's spend it. Seemed like a good idea at the time. Now I'm thinking perhaps, maybe, I don't know. The point is that when does it become unsustainable? Next slide. Education. Take control of what people read and listen to. Take control of what your children learn in school, and you control the nation. Here's the thing. Anymore, I'm afraid, if you ask me for an advice, and I would give you, if you say, I don't know where to send my kid to school, I would tell you, send them to a trade school. Don't let them go to college. Now, I know we have some college kids, and that seem to be pretty well founded. Katie, you got a chance, although, from what I understand, just recently you jumped out of a plane. So now I'm not sure. The point is, we have some, but anymore, if they go to an Ivy League school, when they finish their education, they will come forth with a degree as a socialist Democrat that is against the mores that we used to stand for and against the very Word of God, and it all becomes, judge not lest you shall be judged, all opinions are equal. It's not true. It's simply not true. But remember, white horse rider and war. So you had the one that's filled with deception has been out there, and now the warfare is coming, and it's coming in. And by the way, if you can teach the children, and I have seen on Facebook, you know, I went to school. I have a modicum of an education. Some even think that I am intelligent. It's hard to believe. But when I talk to them, it's like I've never gone to school. I'm just old and stupid. And I listen to their arguments, and they are Grimm, when he was telling fairy tales, had more truth in his fairy tale than our young people coming out of college and saying that my ideas about Scripture are antiquated and no longer fit the culture. And the Bible was written for long ago. And today we have evolved into something better. But let me tell you something. The Bible said the Word of God was made flesh. Therefore, for you to say it is no longer relevant, let me tell you what that really translates to. Jesus is no longer relevant. So in Texas, what did they start taking down, sister?
Oh, my son told me they're trying to get all the statues down.
So now we'll take the statues of Jesus down, include him in the statues from those in the South. They have to protect the Lincoln Monument, the man who stood and helped to free the slaves. So this has nothing to do with black people anymore at all. And it's a shame that some people are going to think that this represents black people. It does not represent black people. A lot of black people are so thankful that slavery has been abolished and they have an opportunity to go forward. But what they want to do is something totally different. They want to eradicate. They took down the statue of Ulysses Grant, the man who fought to free and to allow for the Emancipation Proclamation to be signed. I heard, of course, so I don't know how much of this is true anymore because of the deceptions there. Some of you, we went through the Juneteenth thing just recently, Juneteenth. Y'all remember that? How many of you know what Juneteenth is? Okay. I may have mentioned it, I don't know. But in Texas, where they celebrated, where this started, There were slaves down there that had never been told that the war was over and the Emancipation Proclamation had been signed. And that whole entire area was run by Democrats. Why do the black people continue to vote for Democrats when they've done nothing to help them? Now, I know I'm not allowed to have an opinion because I'm antiquated and old. But I would think if somebody voted to keep me in the dark about my freedom, I may not like them anymore. But then again, I'm in so much trouble now because all of this is broadcast. I have been receiving some lovely mail. Education, take control of what the people read and listen to. This is Saul Alinsky's idea of taking down the idea of America and replacing it with a socialist state. Next slide. Religion. Remove the belief in God from the government and schools. Does that sound like that's something that has been done? It's a pretty obvious playbook to us now, isn't it? When it was written some time ago. But it's just as prevalent today and just as accurate today. And it really tells a telling tale of what's going on. Next slide, please. Class warfare. Divide the people into the wealthy and the poor, and this will cause more discontent. Now they're saying that we need to take away all the money from the rich and give it to the poor. We're all going to be Robin Hood. Happy days. It will be easier to take or tax the wealthy with the support of the poor. I mean, if you don't have two nickels to rub together, you could understand why the guy that's driving the Mercedes-Benz that's why I've been trying to get one, but you can see why, well, that guy's got it made. Maybe not. He might be dealing with just as many problems as you're dealing with. You don't know that. Matters of fact, I've learned that a lot of rich people hire a lot of people who need a job. But then again, that's old and antiquated. And all the old people just need to go away. Next. In the mid-1990s or 80s, at the height of the Cold War nuclear arms race, President Ronald Reagan once openly pondered the potential for an age-ending war in our time. Reagan, go to the next one. Reagan was considered, he said these words, "I turn back to the ancient prophets." This is our president. "I turn back to the ancient prophets in the Old Testament and the signs foretelling Armageddon." And he mused, "And I find myself wondering." I think we are in the situation now where we've seen the work of the white horse rider as he has made deception the common ideology of the day. And now we see wars and rumors of wars all around us. Next slide, just go on to the next one, please. If we're the generation that's going to see the come about, they have been in times in the past when we thought the world was coming to an end. But he said even then, but nothing, anything like this. Some of you remember that there were nations that went through ethnic cleansing and mass murders. Well, Germany is probably one of the best examples when they decided to kill all the Jewish people that was in Germany. Soviet Union, China, Cambodia, the SUDAN, Rwanda, countless smaller conflicts, nevertheless took multiple thousands of lives in Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, the Balkans, Spain, Cuba, Central South America, Israel, Northern Ireland, and many African nations. In addition, history will view the 20th century as a period in which terrorism became commonplace. And now we think of terrorism only as 9/11. But what's going on in our nation today is also terrorism. And so that time also engendered the ultimate arms race that began and going all the way back. Every nation wanted to be on top of our armament. But we have people today that are saying that America should not be armed. Just lay them all down. Not only that, let us do something even better. Let's lay all of our arms down and defund the police. If we defund the police department, this will be grand. Because no matter how fast you're going, nobody's going to pull you over. I remember watching some of the stuff from 9/11. Now, I remember that? How many of you remember that? You had all these people running down the streets. Fear absolutely blossomed on their face. There was another group that was running in the opposite direction towards the horrendous onslaught of things that were happening. When they went in, they were dressed in blue and dressed in uniforms of fire departments. And they died there while many ran away. And they died trying to get people out. But let's defund them. We don't need anybody like that to... By the way, they are not law enforcement. They are peace officers. They are peace officers. If we didn't have them, there would be no peace. Are they the ones that enforce the law? Well, they have laws out there, but basically it's usually when somebody goes against that law, they go against the peace that law established. And they're peace officers. We forget about this. So they say, let's defund the police department. We've never seen anything like this before. What kind of idea is behind that? Take away their guns, control their education, control their health insurance and health, control how much money they make sure they don't have any guns, and then take away the last bastion that they have defending them, the police department. Does that sound like something you've heard? I know you're looking at me and say, but preacher, there is more. No, there isn't any more to this. It's just as simple as it can be. Saul Alinsky was saying, if you want to turn America into a socialist nation, these are the things that you must accomplish. And our president said, I think that we're heading towards Armageddon, and there ain't a thing that we can, next slide, there's not a thing that we can do to stop it. That's what he said. A coming war to end all wars. And the ride of the second of the four horsemen unleashes the malignant forces of evil and removes the last vestiges of peace from the earth. And that's what he wishes to do. And today, we're in a situation where we don't know what to tell our children concerning the future. Because it has become very bleak, hasn't it? It surely has. So we look at what's going on today, and it's a very frightening time. There is so much information in the Scripture about the symbols of war. And the second horseman is perhaps the most easily identified of the famed four horsemen of the riders of the apocalypse because of the way that he looks. He's riding, he's got a sword, and he's riding a red horse, and red, the sign of war. Matters of fact, they used to worship the god of war, Mars, and his was red. That's the red planet. And by the way, the Greek word that John uses for red is pouros or pyros, meaning the color of fire. And that's not the normal Greek word for red. Eurythros would be, eurythros. I'm not very good in Greek. But it is suggesting that a fire starts here, and a fire starts here. Most of you know that when a forest fire begins, a little blaze doesn't take long before it becomes a roaring inferno. And thousands of acres are taken out. And this was the idea behind it, that He would be a fiery red horse, a fiery red symbol. I hope that some of you are getting something out of this lesson tonight. I'm not quite sure. I can't see you too well. I think it is an out-of-control wildfire is what he's saying. That's the word that he's using. This red horse is an out-of-control wildfire. Does that sound like what we're looking at in the world today? An out-of-control wildfire? I think so. So, the Hebrew language does not have a similar biblical term. However, the color red or scarlet in the Old Testament frequently symbolizes blood, whether that represents a blood sacrifice or the shedding of blood and violence. And scarlet has two other interesting meanings too, that of wealth and luxury. And one could make a case that all these meanings could apply to the second seal. The horseman's great sword is a translation of the word megali. Again, that's not ordinary sword of war. That would be, forgive me, Warfalle, but a short sword or a long knife like a dagger. And this sword basically was used in blood sacrifices. And that's the sword that the red horse rider wields. A sword used in sacrifice. So he would be willing to sacrifice anything to accomplish his goals. And remember, the world has been changed because of the white horse rider and all of the deception that he has used. So now we're looking at something else. A power was given to the four horsemen to kill with a sword, with hunger, with death, a great sword. Basically, it is equivalent of a thoroughly effective instrument of death. Doesn't seem people are really... The idea of death today is not like it used to be. There was a time when preachers preached about, are you ready? And I'm gonna explain this to you in the only way I know how. But back in the day, a person living 70 years was a phenomenon. Back in those days, most children died in the first 2 years of birth. If you go to some of the old houses, you will see, and often in their own backyards, several graves of the children that died before one of them lived. It was common. And when the preachers preached back in that day, he said, you need to prepare to meet your God. And most of them responded because they were in their 40s and 30s and 40s because they didn't think they'd ever see 50. But we're in an age now where 70 years is commonplace. And so the fear of death is not what it used to be. And it's even changed how we preach the gospel. I tell a young person to prepare to meet their God, they're saying, well, no, I got lots of years. But back in the olden days, it was not so. Death was common. We have kind of put death on a hiatus, a little vacation, and moved it back a little. Well, it didn't take God by surprise. God said, if you live 70, and now that's about the average age. So, Bob, you and I are about to check out. But the sword is used as God's symbol of judgment. And I do believe that these four riders represent the judgment, Ronnie, that God is pouring out in the latter days. And he's judging it. Is he using judgment as a lesson to teach us something, to illuminate us? How much time do I have, Mary?
8.
Oh, my. Well, I often don't get as far as I think I'm going to. Wars and rumors of them. There was never any intent, I don't think, in Scripture by John to obscure the meaning of this. John's description of the rest horse says matter-of-factly, and it was granted that one who sat on it could take peace from the earth, and that people should kill one another, in Revelation 6:4. And that second seal plainly represents conflict, war, destruction, and bloody death, sacrifice. And Jesus said it in the second part of his Olivet Discourse, and you will hear of wars and rumors of wars, and see that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation. Do we have that? Kingdom against kingdom. Do we have that? And the wording implies an expected increase in conflict due to the stresses of the time. We are living in a time of great stress. People are stressed out. The Bible said that men's hearts would fail them for fear of things coming upon the world in these latter days. Well, certainly we are seeing things that vex our very soul. We're almost like we're at the gate of Sodom as Lot was. And the Bible said that every day he saw what was going on, and it vexed his very soul. And it's kind of like where we are today. We see what's going on, the hatred from the blacks against the white, white against black. Oh, by the way, I didn't explain that Asian thing before. Let me go back to that so that you understand, because a lot of people will not get that. But there is, like, we know who buys what, right? And Aunt Jemima syrup, the buying level is, the number one buying is like, the number is 200. Black people who bought Aunt Jemima syrup was 198. 2 from Perfect. White people was like 140, 150. Asians, only 40 or 50. So that's what I said, they didn't like the syrup. Not that they didn't like black people, and I know that if I didn't come back to this, some of you'd go home, and that's the only thing you remember out of the entire lesson. Do I have another slide up there? Look at the history of war will give us a clue. Let's go on to the next, please. This idea of warfare has been going on since the very beginning. That's true. The next one, you know that in Genesis 4, read of the first human war, the conflict between Cain and Abel, the sons of the first. I mean, we are capable of hurting one another. From the very beginning, go to the next one. From the very beginning, this is the nature of man to hurt. No, I'm good. We're closing in. We're not getting done with the red horse, but we are getting done with my slides. I think it is important to understand that John extends the warfare to the killing of one another. And the killing of one another, by the way, may be even in the church. Let us be careful about who we criticize in here. I'm not talking about judging with the Word of God. It's criticizing one another. You know, I think that a person can murder another person with the tongue. Be careful what you say. People need to come to this place and cry out sanctuary and believe that it's something, that there's something special about this place. There is a feeling here of love and acceptance. Now that part of that little snippet that we saw that Brother Juan showed, I agree with. The church ought to be a place that whoever comes is welcome. I remember one time that there was a very large church, a very wealthy church in one of the college towns, and they were praying. They didn't have very many young people in the church at all. And they were praying that God would send some young people to the church. They wanted the young folks to come. And so one particular Sunday morning, this young man from the local college came. His shirt had all kinds of graffiti on it. And he was wearing shorts. Don't like shorts. Unless I'm wearing them at home, because I got the legs to sport it. But some of you old men don't have legs that you should let anybody else see. If there was an aesthetic police, you'd be arrested. And anyway, he came that way, and he was looking for a seat. And you know, it's big church, couldn't find a seat. So the young man had long hair that looked like it hadn't been totally washed that day, but it could have been washed one day. And so here he was, and he gets into the church, and he's looking, he can't find any, so he marches right up to the front, in front of the altar, and he sits down on the floor. And every row that he passed, the people going, will you look at that? I mean, he doesn't care anything about this church. He looks like a bum. That's what he looks like, a bum. He's probably he's just a hippie. He's a hippie. Probably on drugs. Probably had 2 pulls of a shot and 1 toke over the line before he got over here. By the way, even Lawrence Welk had a young couple that was singing 1 toke over the line. They didn't even know what it was about. I'd like to point out, when we heard this music, we didn't know it was about drugs either. 1 toke over the line, sweet Jesus. 1 toke over the line. Sitting downtown in the railway station. 1 toke. Puff the magic dragon. Live by the sea. He frolicked in the early morn in the land called Annalee. I'm going to get in trouble for this too. There he was. And one of the deacons, one of the old mossy back, state-of-the-art deacons, stood up, and they had people, you could almost hear a collective anticipation of the people. Well, he's going to set it right. And here comes this deacon. He had a cane in his hand too, not like my little stick here. Last thing on here is pastoring through a pandemic. So here he comes up there with his cane, right up to his head. He probably knocked that boy in the head, that cane. He got up to there, that boy was, and this old man used his cane to get down, to sit on the ground with him. He said, I just want to say how thankful I am that you're here today. And what a blessing it is for me to see you. I've been praying that God would send us some young people. And you're the only one that's come so far. I just want to tell you that you're welcome here. I'm the head deacon. I got to tell you, I don't particularly care sitting on the floor. But I'm going to sit right here with you until the service is over. The young man said, well, thank you. He said, I really need something else in my life. And he said, oh, son, this is a place to find it. Well, maybe there is some good in the old people after all. Maybe old people not really interested in just saying bad things just to make you miserable. Maybe some of the old people still remember the truth before the white horse rider destroyed it all. You just want to share it with you before our time is up. I don't know what's going to... My time is up. You've never had that good a timing in your entire life. Well, I didn't quite finish all the things, but I got a pretty good portion of what I want you to see on the Red Horse Rider. Are you still enjoying this enough to stick around and see the other two, and if it maybe take another half a day or... There are some things that we need to learn. There are some things that are happening around the world today that God is saying, I'm just about ready to make my appearance. And I believe with all of my heart that it is not going to be long before we see him. Matter of fact, I believe that there are people in this congregation that is going to see the rapture of the church. Amen. I do. I think we're that close. So let's hang in there and listen to the entire 4 riders of the apocalypse, because they are out there now. They're not hidden anymore. We're seeing them every day. Things to learn along the way. Yeah? Okay. Let me finish with this. Those of you who'd like to, leave $1 up here. All the money now is going towards the pantry, because I want to have a pantry at the church. I'm not talking about a pantry to feed the multitudes everywhere else. I'm talking about our own people. I don't know. I mean, we will if somebody comes. Turn nobody away. But I don't know what I do know. Does anybody remember what the unemployment rate is in Ohio again? How many people, how many millions are unemployed? Anybody know what it is? We're talking about millions of people. I thought it was 4.3 million people. It might have been higher than that, was unemployed in Ohio. A lot of people right now are looking for jobs, can't find it. They're qualified, but they can't find the jobs because all the people that's still off of work are still off of work. The government's trying to borrow money from the government to pay for not Social Security, but unemployment compensation. A lot of people are off of work. Don't know, and we've been very fortunate so far. Most of our people are working. God has blessed our church. But I think, and I'm going to take an awful risk here, and I may get in a lot of trouble, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. I do believe that the reason this church is doing so well is because of the leadership that it had to push out in a situation where it was kind of frightening and pay this building off even when we didn't have the money. We didn't think to do it. We did it. God bless that. Don't know what the future is going to hold, but I believe with all my heart that God is going to help us in the future as well. Now, he said, because you have kept the word of my patience, because you have kept the word of my patience, I will keep thee from the hour of great temptation that shall come upon all the world to try them that dwell upon the earth. God's going to keep us. Amen. So not to worry. Even with all of these things that are going on, those of you that stand close to Jesus, lift up your head. Your redemption draweth nigh. So leave $1 up here. It'll be going to the pantry. I think we got about $500 somewhere around there for the pantry. I'm not exactly sure. People left me to clean up. They come to claim it, we got a head start. And some of our folks have been bringing us, when we found sales and stuff like this, been bringing us great big old cans of green beans and corn. And we have to feed somebody. I'll take one of my lambs, kill it, see if they didn't give it to me. Kill it, we'll come up here and have lamb and corn and green beans. Tomatoes. You know, I don't know how, but my garden is really pretty right now. I had to replant a couple of things because I do a lot of rain in my house. My potatoes are blooming. My zucchini is blooming, and when the zucchini comes in, there will be a zucchini run. What we do is the zucchini comes in all at once, and we have to get rid of it. So what I do, I get a bunch of them together and go, and they'll bring zucchini run. Zucchini grenade. So if you'd like to leave $1 up here, it will be utilized. And I guess that's all I have to say, except for, do we have any more in about business? Would you like to talk about this? No, you have to come right up here. But Brian's got something. No, that's something. Hold the box in one hand and speak right into this, and you'll be in good shape.
We're doing an unofficial event downtown 4th of July weekend. So Thursday, the 2nd, Friday the 3rd and Saturday the 4th, since we're not doing fireworks. We've kind of gotten the businesses together to kind of modify their hours so that we have something to do. Right now we have 3 bands or performers lined up for the weekend, starting on Thursday. Yeah, so mark your calendars. We're going to be posting about it on the Fredericktown page and fredericktown.org, and we're making an Instagram so you can follow us there and stuff. So it'll be good and hopefully support a lot of the businesses, and they've had a hard go of it the past couple of months. So yeah, that's that.
So it's just to support our businesses in Fredericktown because, as you know, there's been a mess with this coronavirus. So that being said, they're going to try to open up the town a little bit.